Marhay na hapon, Bicolandia, and good afternoon, everyone. We're back on our 5th webinar session. Again, I'm Iris, and I'll be your host for this webinar. So earlier this morning, some of you might have attended our morning session, and we're happy to know that you are inspired to learn more this afternoon. Before we start, don't forget to click the subscribe button and hit that notification bell for more webinar updates. So let's now proceed to the following guidelines. Kindly observe proper etiquette in this webinar session. We encourage everyone to participate in the comment section. Only essential questions will be entertained during the Q&A portion due to the limited time. Other questions can be noted in the online evaluation form after the session. Only evaluation form after the session will only be open until 5 p.m. today, July 30, 2020. You will receive your e-certificate shortly after the evaluation. So before we formally start, we sincerely apologize for the sudden change of time slot. We ask for your understanding as our original speaker cannot make it today because of a very important matter to attend to. But we are very blessed this afternoon because our session speaker accommodated us despite the short notice. Ateneo de Naga University, through the College of Computer Studies, the Center in Information Technology Education, and the Ateneo ICTC, present to you our 5th webinar series entitled Effective Online Assessment Using Google Forms. So our speaker for this afternoon is from Valenzuela City. She is the grade school principal of the Reedley International School, a former instructor in UP Diliman from 1998 to 1999, and a former coordination editor in Vibal Publishing from 1999 to 2001. She is a certified educator, Google for Education, and active member of the Google Educators Group, or GEG, Philippines. Everyone, let us all welcome on screen Ma'am Maria Andrea de Guzman.
Hi everyone, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi. Would you like me to start? Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Maan. Please call me Maan. I know she said that my whole name is Maria Andrea. But this afternoon, I'll be your speaker, and thank you for being here. I hope that you learned something from me today. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so this afternoon session is actually about creating assessments using Google Forms. And I think I want to walk you through how to create that assessment or how to use the form as a test or an assessment for your classes. Now, I looked at the demographic of those who will be attending today, and I was watching the comments in the feed, and I was so pleased and at the same time amazed that all of us can be together in this platform, even though we're so far apart. I saw that a couple of you are from Oman. Some of you are here in Metro Manila, although far cities from where it is that I am. But most of you, I guess, because of the host, are from the Bicol region. So thank you very much for spending this time with me. Okay, so let's proceed. Google Forms is one of my favorite, actually, tools to use in the G Suite for Education because it's very flexible. So one of the things that I want to be able to impart today is that how flexible Google Forms can be, not just in terms of assessment, but what it is that you can do afterwards, after the assessment. That's really important to us educators. So let's go through the presentation outline. So I want to walk you through our thought process when we chose Google or G Suite for Education in the school that I work for. And then let's go to try to create an assessment using Google. And then I want to Google Forms rather. And then I want to talk about the advantages of Google Forms. And in particular, this particular add-on called Flubaroo. And then maybe I can spend some time with you with a Q&A if you have any questions. I look at the comments once in a while when I can switch my screen, because right now I'm sharing all of it with you. And so that I can address concerns immediately. I'm pretty sure there are lots of concerns, especially since most of us are new to the to the idea of distance learning and to this whole setup due to the pandemic. Okay, so let's begin. So why Google? It's really an easy answer because that's the only answer we have. We chose Google because it was easy. So it was very clear to us that when we decided to use the platform for education, it was an easy fix for a lot of us because it was available. You don't need a lot of things. It's all online. And so it was so easy to use for research. That's why we decided to use Google. The second reason, I think primarily, is that you and your students can access the tools on any device. And that particular adaptability of the platform made it a real selling point for us. You can access the Google platform, the Google Forms, either on a Mac or an Android or a PC or a desktop. You can use a desktop, a laptop. You can use a tablet. You can also use it on your phones. So if you have a smartphone, you can teach through your smartphone. You don't need much else. So that's why we wanted to go through Google. Okay. So let's go to the meat of it. So let's create some Google Forms. Now, when I looked at your demograph, some of you are very comfortable with it, but there's still half of you who are not. So I hope you'll be patient as we walk through the process of it. Okay, so let's create some forms. So, okay, if you have a second device, or if you're watching me from, let's say, a tablet or your phones, and you have a laptop, feel free to do the steps with me, especially if you already have a Gmail account. Okay. That's actually the first step. You have to have a Gmail account at the very least. So what you want to have is a Gmail account. Largely, it's your email account, and you use your same credentials. Now, so let's begin. So we want to create the form. Now, if you're looking at my screen, this is actually Google Slides. And what you have here is an Omnibox. Now, in my education account, in my Google for Education account for the school, it's as easy as, let's say, I click on a tab, and I get this. This is formally called actually the Chrome application launcher. But for most of us, we call it the waffle. And some of us, we call it the matrix because of those 9 dots over there. But in the education account, you will see that all the apps are here. And one of them is Google Forms. But since we're using right now my personal account, it's not going to be there. What I did was to put it here, right here on my bookmark page. But one of the easiest ways to do it is simply to type on the Omnibox forms.google.com, and it will take you to your Forms interface. Now, Forms has a lot of templates. You can do almost anything with it. So you can see I've used it quite often. So I have quite a number of forms already in my drive. So, but if you look at the template gallery, it has some suggestions for you already. But since our purpose is actually for education and assessment, these are the templates that you should be most interested in. Now, it's easy for you, for example, to create a blank quiz, but I do suggest that you don't do that. Because there's a tab there that makes it immediately as a quiz. I'll explain more later. That makes the answers easily accessible by students. So what you want is to actually create just a blank form. Okay, so you click this. So you click add. So there. So now you have this untitled form. Now, you can go ahead and make the quiz, but generally what I would suggest is that the first section that you want, obviously after titling the form, is to create a passcode. So let's title the form first. So let's say this is a general information quiz. You put that in the title. You can put a description here or maybe a message. And then one of the things that I like about Google, if you notice, when I clicked on the blank or the untitled form, it just copies that title. And so it makes it easier for a lot of us. Okay, so you can put a description for, let's say, here. But one of the things I'd like to do is to recommend is for you guys to actually create a new section. So you have another section. And for this section, to add a question. And what you want to do is to create a passcode. Okay. Why do you want to create a passcode? So that's the second step. So you want to create a passcode. Why do you want to create a passcode? You want to do that because for some of us who are not in let's say you don't have a Google Classroom or you don't use Google Classroom, you might have to send out the form in a more public setup, maybe Facebook or maybe Twitter, I don't know. Whatever works for you, because right now that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use the platforms that are easy and working for us. So if, let's say, you have to post it in a more public platform than Google Classroom, then the passcode ensures that only your students can access the quiz. Okay, so how to do that is fairly easy. What you want to do is you want to go here, and of course the question for the passcode is, what is the passcode? And you will see that Google actually immediately recognizes that you're trying to create a passcode and makes it into a validation. So response validation has been added. If it doesn't do that, all you have to do is go through here, which is the more. That's how I call it, the more. Some people call it the stoplight, but here. And you can click it here for response validation. You can also remove it if that's not what you want. But for this particular section, you want it to be to put the passcode. Okay, so let's try. So you want it to be a number, or maybe it will give you option, a text, a length, or a regular expression. But normally, I will just use a number that I can give. And here is a number that is equal to. So it has to be equal to so that it is exact. And for us, we can write 2020. Okay? That way it's easy to remember for the purposes of this exercise. Okay, you can also put here a custom error text. You can say wrong year or wrong password or passcode. And if they write the wrong one, they will get that particular message. So this is how to put the passcode. And I strongly recommend that that's the first thing that you do. That way, no one else can access your quiz but the students. They're the only ones who can access it. So if you look at preview, this is the preview over here. You can see that it's the preview because it's the I. You will see that it asks you for the passcode. Okay. And when you put 2020, it allows you to go next. But since we haven't done anything, we're just not there. So we can quit this for now. Okay, so there. So that's how to do the passcode. Now, there are many ways for you to make passcodes. Maybe if you can put several numbers. You can put, let's say, as I said, a text like a word, or maybe a length or a regular expression. But my favorite is just to use a number, and normally about 6 numbers, so that it's easy and it changes every time. I don't recommend that you use your birthday or anything like that, or your ATM pin, obviously. But it's something that the students will easily recall as well, so that they're not lost when they're taking the quiz. Okay, there. Now, so after one section, you will see this particular drop-down menu. And what it does is it allows you to configure what it is that will happen if they write the right answer. So if it's the right passcode, then they continue to the next section. It's defaulted that way, so that's where you see it. But you can also say, go to section 1, go to section 2, or submit the form. So those are just the possibilities. Obviously, you want them to go to the next section, because if you go to section 1, just for exercise, I'll show you. So when you see it, that's the preview. So what is the passcode? When you put 2020 and you click next, you just go back here. And so it becomes a loop, and that's not where you want to be. Okay, so you want to go to the next section. I wanted to show that because that's also something you can do later or play around with later. Okay, so let's go back. So now that you have the passcode set already, so the passcode is 2020, you want to go to your next section. Okay, so the next step after the passcode is that you go to student information. So you want to put in this section all of the information you would need to mark the student. Now, for me personally, so I would title this section Student Information. There are many ways that you can get the information that you need. So one of the things that Google Forms does is it gives you a multitude of ways to get it. But of course, for student information, all you want to use is short answer. Because largely, what you want to get, of course, is the child's name. And then, of course, they just write their name. Now, you can be, if you're OC about it, you can also put instructions. For example, what I usually do is I put name, and then I ask them to write their surname first. So surname, and then first name. And if you want, their middle initial. So that you expect them to write that. The other thing that I ask from my students whenever I ask them to do this, I add another, this is the add button for the question. So I get another short answer. Maybe you want to know their section. Okay, if your school is divided into sections. So maybe grade and section. And it allows them to write it there. You can also be very OC about the format, and maybe you will require them to say, let's say, grade X, which stands for the number, and then section name. That way, when it goes to the place where the repository of it, all of the formats are the same. So these are some of the things that you can do. And of course, you want to require that. Okay, so required. Okay, I'm sorry, let me go back here. You want to make sure that this is also a required question. That means they cannot move forward without answering that question. Okay. So there, so that's for student information. So that's the second. So now that you have a passcode for your quiz, so that protects your quiz in terms of accessibility, and you have the student information, you know who's taking the quiz and what grade and section it is that he or she is. But you can now move on to make your actual quiz. So you create another section, that's the bottom over here. And this is now the quiz proper. Okay. So here, you can add your questions already. So you will see I've been using this toggle for a while. And let me just go through each. So this one is the add question. So the plus sign with the circle, that's add question. And it allows you to add as many questions as possible. This one is import questions. You can see that that's actually Google Docs. If you've attended, I'm not sure as to what sessions you've attended, but if you're familiar with Google Docs, you can actually import a Google document, a quiz that you made in Google document into forms. So this is one way for you to do it. This one is for title and description, so you can change the formats a little. This one, you can add an image. If you, for example, some of my biology teachers in school or some of my science teachers, they add an image and, for example, for cells, and ask the students to identify the part of the cell that they've encircled. That's something that you can do even with forms. You can also add a video. And for example, you can ask them to watch a YouTube video and then answer questions after. That's also possible. But for us, we'll just use a straight quiz for now. So this is our quiz proper. And you can put your instructions here immediately. So it could be as simple as, it's really up to you, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to say, please answer the questions below. That's it. And I can proceed to add my questions. So I want to add, let's say, a multiple choice question. And the Google form actually tries to predict what it is that you're trying to do and gives you the option that is most logical. So let's say I want to add a multiple choice question. I actually prepared some here. So for example, who is the national hero of the Philippines? Okay. So now you want to put your options. Okay, so this could be Jose Rizal. Maybe, and you want to add another option, and you notice it added yet another option for you. Okay, so you can have as many as you want in terms of the answer. But we all know that 4 is our best number. So let's put 4 distractors, so to speak. So Andres Bonifacio. Apolinario Magnini. And let's add one more, Antonio Luna. And you can add on. So don't worry if you don't write anything, it will just disappear from the form on the option. So it's just there in case you want to add some more. So let's add another question. Okay. So for the next question, because this is just for general information, let's ask, what holiday are we celebrating tomorrow? So it's still multiple choice, and I'll probably put all of my choices. So there's Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Fitri. Okay. I hope I'm pronouncing them right. April, Kadir, and then Ramadan. So you have your 4 options already. Now, it doesn't have to be multiple choice completely of everything. You can mix the types of questions. So when you add another question, let's add another one. And this time, I want it to be open-ended. For the open-ended questions, I can have either a short answer or a paragraph. So let's say I want a paragraph because I want an essay. And I want them to tell me what is making you most anxious about this pandemic. And just allow them to answer the question. Okay, so we'll stop there. So this is our quiz proper. Okay, and what you want now is now that you have your quiz set up, let's do a preview of it. Okay, so the first thing is that see, there's general information. It's a required question. So if let's say I decide to use, I logged on with 1989 and I click next, it will just tell me it's the wrong year and the wrong passcode, and I can't do anything. So even if I click on this, nothing will happen. The only time I can enter the quiz is if I enter the right passcode, which for us is 2020. And you will see it automatically removes the red parts. And so I go next. So I write my name. Sorry, Santos is my maiden name. Yes, and then maybe I am grade 5, mahiyain there. And then I click next. And then I can answer it. Please answer the questions below. Who's the national hero of the Philippines? Who's Rizal? What holiday are we celebrating tomorrow? Did I get that right? It's Eid al-Adha. I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar. Apologies if it is wrong. And then anxious about this pandemic, maybe I can say that there is no vaccine yet. Okay. And then the child clicks submit. And it says your response has been recorded. Okay. But what I'd like for us to be able to do is to make this as personal as possible, because you can actually make this response personal to you. So you want to go back to your settings. So after we have made the quiz, the next step would be is actually to have a confirmation message. So let me show you how to create that. Okay. So here you can see at the top that there are 3 places that you can go to. These are settings, and this is where you want to be to make your confirmation settings. When you click on settings, you have all of these options. So if, for example, I want to collect email addresses, I can do that. I just click on that. And automatically, the form will collect the email addresses of those who answered my test for me. And that's one way for you to check also if it was your student who actually answered the test. That way you can see that it's coming from their emails, especially if you're in a singular school domain. You also want to limit to 1 response. If you noticed earlier when I didn't limit it, there was an option to submit another response. So because this is a quiz, you want to limit to 1 response. Now you can decide if they can edit after or see summary charts and text responses. But normally in a quiz, I do not do that. So I just have a limit to 1 response, collect email addresses. Now in terms of presentation, this is the tab that I want you to look at also. You want to have your confirmation message. So perhaps I can say, thank you. Thank you. This is to confirm that I have received your quiz. I probably will say we will discuss the results on today is Wednesday. Let's say I will discuss the results on Monday next week. Or perhaps I can put a date when our next class is. Now, here you will see that there's a quizzes tab. You can see it. And I can make it into a quiz. If I make it into a quiz, let's say, I can actually choose to immediately after each submission to release the grade, and then respondents can see this. So this is why I told you that you should just use a blank form rather than a quiz. Because sometimes, especially if we're in distance learning, and maybe they want to take the test, you're making the test available at a particular length of time, students can actually screenshot and send their answers to one another. So I don't use this particular function when I'm making a quiz. So instead, I'll teach you an add-on later that you can do. So I will turn that off. That's an option for you, especially if you want to just use this particular form as review material rather than the actual quiz. But if it's an actual assessment, I recommend that you don't use the make a quiz function. So you have your presentation down, you have your confirmation message, you want to collect emails, you've limited the response, and all you have to do is save. So now, when I do preview, you can see those changes already. So it's asking for my email address. Okay, so I put my email address there. It's asking for the passcode now, which is 2020, and I can click next. The same thing. So I will just write my name. I am, what's I grade 5 mahihain. Okay, then I answer the quiz. So sa Rizal, I think I said Idil Adha. And then I said that for the pandemic, the fact that there is no vaccine. And I hope your students give you better answers than that. And so I get this message. Thank you. Then I'll know your students will know when the answers will be discussed, maybe in your Google Meet or in your class or in your online class the following week. And so you can have those quiz. Okay. So if you have any questions at this point, please make sure you put it in the chat box so that they can send it to me. So, but this is basically the basic quiz that you can do. Now, this has a lot of applications in almost all subjects. And because you are able to put multimedia in it, you can do many things with the form itself. But one of my favorites, and I think most of you are most concerned, is about grading. Okay. Now, there are many options for you when you're doing a quiz. If you noted earlier, there is a toggle for make a quiz. So if you remember over here, you can make a quiz. That's something that you can do. And what that automatically does is save that. So for here is that you can actually make an answer key. So if I put that out, it asks me to put what the answer is. So that's not available in all the other sections because these are just to get identification. But in the quiz proper, such as this particular question, you will note that when I click it, it asks for an answer key. And when I click that, I can click on the right answer, and I can assign points. So that's one way to do it. So for example, this question is worth 5 points. And then I can add answer feedback. So for example, for incorrect answers, I can say, please read chapter 1 again. And then let's say for correct answers, I can say, great job. And I can save that. So it shows me what the answers I toggled or I assigned for each. So this time, when we go to preview and let's say I answer, so you see, the form already said that I've already responded. That's because it has already recorded my email. So I can no longer fill in the form. And if I click on view score, it will tell me that I have 5 points in that particular question because it is right, because I answered it right. You can do the same for both. So let's try that. So for here, for example, for Idil Adha, you can do the answer key. And then I can pick that. And then I can again sign. And then that's done. And then for here, because it's a long answer, if I do answer key, there's nothing. I can put points, but then I can add an answer feedback. And I can also do this manually. I can set it to none. So that's okay. So they can just write and you can grade that manually later. So those are just some of the things that you can do if you make it into a quiz. Okay. Now, what's nice about also the Google form is that you will see that because I responded twice already before I did the settings, you can see that in the responses tab, there are two. Okay. And you can see that it automatically shows you the grade distribution. So this, I think, is one of the most amazing features of Google Forms if you use it as a quiz. As, let's say, an educator, it makes me see exactly how my students are doing, or how their progress, and if anyone is struggling. So to me, data is so important. It's something that's very big in the school I work for. So we really crunch data every time so that we can help the students better. So it automatically tells me the summary of learning of my students. So, for example, here, frequently missed questions, because I remember in the responses, I made a mistake with what holiday are we celebrating tomorrow, because there's no answer key just yet. And then it tells me who's answered, and then I can release the scores at the same time. I got the passcode 100%, so everybody knew the passcode. And it tells you who the name of that person who answered is. So I answered it twice. So that's something you can take a look. And you can actually make this as customized to you as possible. So twice, it's the right answer. Idiladha, right answer. And then it logs all the answers for the long responses if you want. But so those are some of the things that you can do in Sheets. Now that you've done that, now that we know how to do basic Sheets, I hope you're following along with me wherever it is that you are, if you can. Or maybe if that was too fast for you, you can look at the YouTube link later and then slow it down for you. That way you can start creating your own quizzes. It's very flexible. It's a great tool for teachers, actually, if you know what to do with it. Now, one of the more common questions that we have about grading is the idea of test credibility. Because because we're doing this online, a lot of the times your question will be whether or not you know or you are assured that it is the child that is answering. I know this. From experience, I know that some parents can be very more anxious than their children when their children are taking the test. And so what they try to do is they try to help them while they are in that test. And of course, that's not something that we would like for them to do on a regular. So that's why I said, try not to use the quiz template, because the quiz template allows them to view answers after if you choose to do that. And what you can do instead is use add-ons. So one of the best things about forms is Google Suite for Education, actually, is the integration between the different tools that you have. So for example, a Google form can automatically link into a sheet. And all you have to do to tabulate all the answers. And all you have to do is go to the responses and you click on this icon, and you can see that it says create a spreadsheet. Sorry, my cursor is just there. Create a spreadsheet. And when you create a spreadsheet, it gives you the option to either create a spreadsheet that is new or select an existing one. For us, let's create a new one because I have it. So once you create, it links you to Sheets, and my answers are there. And it's tabulated for me already. Okay, so I can see all the answers for each question and where it is that they got wrong. So you see the score is here already. Okay, and this is great in terms of being able to see how a child is doing and being able to see a class. Now, if you have, let's say, 60 students, this matters to you because immediately you already have your scores. And if you can link this, let's say, to an electronic record book, maybe in Sheets, in Google Sheets also, you can also download this as an Excel file over here. You can download as, and you can use Microsoft Excel or whatever interface it is that you will be using the sheet for, and you will have your data with you wherever it is, and you can access it in different platforms already. So this is also one of my favorite features of Google Forms. It's integration to Google Sheets, because, for example, in our school, we have what we call baseline tests, and that's for the whole grade level. So when we do the test, and if we do it on forms, automatically it gives me the data immediately. So I can make curricular changes based on the data that I have. So it can be a very powerful tool. So especially if you're wondering whether or not your children can do the skill that you have just taught. And that's something that I think all educators should be very interested in. Okay. So one of the add-ons I wanted to show you was an add-on called Flubaroo. So add-ons for sheets are actually here. So you can see that I've already added Flubaroo here. So, but since I only have two, I'm going to open a new sheet to show you how to use it, okay? So I'll go to my drive. Okay, so this is our practice sheet. So you can see that this one is actually, I copy pasted this from one of our tests and misspelled form. So let me just correct that for you. Okay. So please do not judge me on my choice of singers, but I used, I think I could not give you their real names, so I just placed names of singers there. And these are actual answers of grade 5 students. So, and I just invented sections. So most of the time, your data will look like this, right? So you have a timestamp, especially if it's coming from forms. I always collect email addresses so that I have the option to send them their scores later on. And then they give me a score of the number of items. In this case, this is 45. So it automatically gives me those answers. And now I want to know who did well and who didn't. So I want to use the add-on Flubaroo. So I want to enable it first. So if you haven't, the first thing at this point, what you want is to get the add-on. So you go here. So once you get add-ons, it will take you to this marketplace. And here's Flubaroo. Okay, this one in particular. I really made my pointer very large so that you can see. And that's where, and it's free. This is a free add-on, so you don't need to pay for it because the others are not. But this one is free and you can use it for as many times as possible you want. So it's a great add-on to have. So, but I've already installed it here. So let's just click on it. So the first thing it will ask you is to enable it in this sheet. So it's not automatic. Every time you have a new sheet and you open it, it will ask you, do you want me to enable this add-on to this sheet? And of course, that's what we want to do. So you enable Flubaroo in this sheet. It will give you a notification. And so you just click here. If you need instructions. Okay, but I'll go through it with you so that you won't need that. So I'll just close that because it's enabled, it's now here. So I can just, now you notice that because when I go to Flubaroo, it asks me if I want to grade the assignment or all these other toggles. But this is where what we're interested in, grade assignment. So let's grade it. So step 1. So it asks me what each of the entries are. So for example, the column identifies the student. So it will give you these options. Identify students, skip grading, normal grading, or grade by hand, meaning you want to grade that on your own. So skip grading means you don't need to, for example, you noticed, and this has happened before, that during a test, you see that, okay, that's the wrong question. So you don't want to grade that question. So you can skip the grading of that question. And then you can choose normal grading, and then I'll show you what normal grading does later on, or to grade by hand, which, as I said, you want to grade on your own. Maybe you have a rubric, or maybe it's one of those long responses like earlier. But this one, email address, just simply identifies the student. And you will notice that Flubaroo is smart enough to figure out what it is. Okay. Score, however, is a total, so you don't want that. So I'll probably skip grading there. Complete name obviously identifies the student. Grade level and section also identifies the student. You see that Flubaroo was smart enough to recognize that date is not something to grade. So that's right, skip grade. And then the rest are now questions. So it will ask me if it's normal grading, and it will ask me to assign points. So you can choose from 1 to 10. Okay. for you to assign points. In this case, let's just pretend that all of them is worth 1 point each. So I can continue. There. And then it goes to step number 2. So now it will ask you which entry is the answer key. Now, normally, what I would do is I will answer the form and the first entry will be answer key. In this case, I've assigned that the answer because let's say you forgot to create the answer key and you did the answer, you answered the form, and the answer key will be here, let's say. So I've marked it here. So you choose this entry and it will base the responses and the scores from that particular row. So because that is your answer key. So just press continue. And you will get a notice, like over here, that Flubaroo is grading your assignment. And what it immediately does is it creates a sheet and it shows you all of this data based on the answer sheet. So you still have the time submission. So it tells you it's complete, so you can close that window. Okay. It gives you the number of points possible, the average number of points that the children got. It counts the number of submissions, in this case, 10 submissions, and the number of low scoring questions. There are 36 questions out of the 45 that are low scoring based on your answer key. And it gives you even better data. So it shows you the number of points that each child got and immediately makes that into a percent for you. It also shows you how many times the child submitted the form. In our case, it will most normally be 1 because we limit it to 1 submission per email. Now, if you find that there are different emails there, then I suggest that's when you ask, okay, and that it's accounted for to 1 student, then that's a question for you. You can choose to nullify that test. The score is not graded, the date is not graded, so we can ignore that. In fact, you'll probably can delete that later on for you. And then it shows you immediately an item analysis. Now, the item analysis is a wonderful, suddenly our work is so easy now. The orange ones are the ones wherein the score is very low. So here you see 60% is white, and here the orange ones are the ones below 50 and below. So anything above 50, it will color white. Anything below 50 and below, it will immediately highlight as orange. So you can see immediately which items your students were not able to get. And so maybe those are the items you want to pay attention to. Or in the case of our school, because these are usually standards, what we do is we reteach those particular standards because obviously we haven't been doing a good job if these are the scores. Okay, so you want to take a look at that, and your item analysis is immediate. It's very helpful when you're, let's say, teaching in your co-teaching a level, or if you have really large groups of students. That way, you can see what needs to be beefed up, okay, immediately, and you can see if the teaching has been effective or if you have to change strategies. And so that's very useful for me. So that's one way to grade, and I think that's a great add-on for you. Okay. So there. So, okay. There's one more add-on that I want to be able to show you. But in order for me to do that, I'll need you to do something for me. So, I'd like you to, I'm not sure if John is listening, but I hope he is. If they have given you the link to a form, to an evaluation form for me, that I'd like you to do. So I'd like you to take this time, just a brief time for you to answer it. And then at the end of it, okay, because I'd like to know your feedback if you learned something from me on how you can use Google Forms, let's say, and how you can grade better using Google Forms. I'd like to get your feedback. If you can answer that for me, at the end of it, you should get an email with a certificate. And then I'll talk about it very briefly. So while you're doing that, I'll be also interested in answering your questions if there are any. So there. So I hope that you learned something from me today. I hope that you saw how easy it is actually to make quizzes out of Google Forms, how flexible it is, and how you can make grading easier for you. If you choose to make this a quiz, like if you use, let's say, the quiz option for you, what you want to do is to make sure that those are the times that you're only reviewing. That way, if they view the responses, if you make that available for you, then it's for the students, then it's really for them to learn more rather than to be graded. And then on the actual quiz, I actually recommend that you follow these steps and use Flubaroo to check. That way you can check immediately if their children understand. So there, so I hope that short talk actually gives you an idea on how you can use Google Forms in your classroom. It's a very powerful tool. One of the things that I also use Classroom for, rather Google Forms for, is for surveys, which is one of the things that you're doing now. I'm really surveying your opinion on the talk and how I can improve later on. And also, it's also great for exit slips for students. Maybe if we had more time, I can show you how to do that in the future. But there are many things that you can do in forms that are really very interesting and are very, very useful in the classrooms that we have today. I really strongly suggest that you tinker with it. If you have a Google account, start tinkering with it already. Start thinking of how you can use it in the classroom. It's also great for pre-survey. I know you did a pre-survey because I was able to look at your demographics through that. That is also a Google form. And you can use the pre-survey to determine what it is that your students know or already understand about the topic that you have. And you can use it also for post-evaluation, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So there. So if you have any questions, if you don't have any questions, I'll stop sharing my screen, okay? Can you show me if you received a certificate already? I'd like you to tell me in the comments if you've received a certificate already, so I can talk about that particular add-on. If you can kindly try. While you're doing that, okay, I'll go through some of the questions. Yes, you have to practice, Miss Michelle Bangui. I hope I said that right. You do have to practice. Even I had to practice in the beginning. I think what you want is you want to have a partner that you can throw the form to and see if it's working for you. Because sometimes it's a little intimidating to just send it out to students. So you want to have somebody you can practice with. And that's always been very helpful. I suggest, for example, if you're very interested in Google Forms or the Google platform, you can join GEG Philippines and you can find mentors there. You can also find quite a lot of free stuff, free information online on YouTube. YouTube actually is my favorite search engine. Like if I want to learn how to bake, I just search for recipes on YouTube and you will find so many. So those are very powerful tools for you as well as educators. Sometimes I don't even need to make tutorials for my kids anymore. I just go to YouTube and look and go there. I saw a question here. Can you embed audio? Yes. You can, not audio itself, but you can embed a video that has audio and it will play it perfectly every time. It has never disappointed me in that way. In fact, one of the training, because I didn't have a lot of time to do face-to-face training with my teachers this year, because we're using Zoom, one of the platforms we're using in school is Zoom. I just did a tutorial using forms in Zoom. So I placed the videos there, and if they got the wrong answer, they can't get out of that section. So they have to rewatch the video and then answer the questions again. And only if they perfect that set of answers can they move on to the next. I made it into a contest because I would know who would finish first. And so the first one got a small prize from me at the end of that particular session. So those are some of the fun things that you can do. So it's also great for adults and for training. Okay. So I think that's the feedback link at the bottom. So if you can put it there so that you can get. Great. So some of you guys got your certificates already. Yay! So that particular feature add-on is called an Autocrat. So let me show you how I did that. So this is your training form. So you can see that congratulations to all of you. So I can see that your certificates are here already. So here you see that this is the training form that you would have seen. Oops, it's moving. And then this is the sheet. So at Autocrat is actually, let me click on it before it gets lost again. There. So what I did here is I added what is called an Autocrat. And you can see that it is still generating a response. As soon as I close the form, would stop getting the responses already. But what I did here was to use this add-on. It's called Autocrat. If I won't open it here because it might ruin it and you won't get your certificates. But that's a function that you can use also. It's very simple. When you do Autocrat, all you have to do is create. What I did was to create your certificate using a Google slide. Let me share my screen again, sorry. Okay, there. So what I did was I created a Google slide with this function. Let me just here. See, it just has that complete name, that particular field. And I linked that using Autocrat to your last entry here, complete name. And it tells me that the document successfully created, see? So you got your complete name, how you wanted it to appear. I even asked you how, and it gives me the link to it. So let's say it gets lost, I can email that to you immediately. Okay. So this is the add-on. It's called Autocrat. And I encourage you to try to use it with your students too. It's really great for contests. It's really great for like badges if you want them to earn badges in your class, similar to stars, like you get merit stars, right, if you do well in class. So that's another thing that you can do. We don't have time to go through it, but I know that you can find a lot of YouTube videos that can open it. Also, Autocrat is free, so you don't have to pay for it. And that's really, I think, what's important to us now. A lot of us teachers are trying to upskill in the cheapest way possible. So I'm also very grateful that Ateneo de Naga placed this all together. That way it's accessible to everyone. So that's how I did your certificate. So I hope that you got it. And I hope you enjoy and you can use them there. So I'll stop sharing my screen again. So I'm ready for questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Maan, for sharing with us your expertise. That was very insightful and informative. At this point, we will now entertain questions from the comment section. So if you have questions pa po, you can comment po.
Okay, Jessica's asking if Google will check the quiz automatically. As I showed you earlier, you can do that. You can set the quiz and check it automatically. The problem with that is if you don't do, let's say, a passcode, for example, one of the hacks that a student can do, and you know that it has happened to us before. That's why we know. One of the hacks that a student can do is to take the test in an anonymous way, in an incognito window, and then they can check if they got the wrong answer, and they can see whether, or they can see by elimination which one is the right answer if they do it often enough. So that's why I don't use make a quiz, or nor do I use the quiz template when I create an assessment that I want it to be recorded. So that's why I use Flubaroo instead, because that's the workaround. That way kids won't be able to take the test incognito. The passcode is also a good way. That way only your children can answer it. So yes, that's right, Jessica. You can actually set the Google form to check the quiz for you. But again, if you want it to be as cheat-free as possible, you want to use Flubaroo or that add-on. Okay, is there others? I'm glad that somebody here is using Autocrat already. Good for you. I don't see any more. No, you don't need a domain to automatically. I'm answering Muriel Bitao. Hindi niyo po kailangan ng domain to automatically check the assessment. I used, for example, for this particular session, I actually used just my personal account. It's not an education account, but I can still use Flubaroo to automatically check it. I can still use the quiz function, or the quiz to make a quiz a toggle in order for me to set answer keys for it. So you don't need an education account. It could be free. How can you ensure that students will not, okay, if you want them to not be able to print screen, then that's a different feature. And unfortunately, that's only possible if you have a paid domain. And if your students are accessing the quiz in school enabled devices, because there is an option, let's say in forms, if you're in the education for the premium domain, that they can lock, that you can lock the functionalities of the computer, so that they can only interact with the screen. When they're able to do that, when you enable that, the lock function, it doesn't allow the students to open new tabs, or to create new forms, or to share it, nor can they screen cap, unless they get another device and take a picture of it. So one of the ways that we can make sure that that doesn't happen is you can time the exposure of the form. So there's another add-on called Timify, but that's not free. I have yet to find an add-on that limits the time, that countdowns, because Timify, what it does is when you click on the form, it immediately counts down the number of minutes for you to finish. Like you can set it in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, the child only has 20 minutes to finish that quiz. So that's another add-on, but that's a premium add-on, I believe. So you have to pay for that there. So that's the only drawback of it. Right now, and I will say this for everyone, test credibility is really an issue in education, especially now that all of us are in distance learning. That's why proctoring's websites like ProctorU or Criterion are really earning this time, because in those particular platforms you can put your assessment, and the webcam is on the whole time. They're actually watching. There's somebody, a bot is watching you, making sure that you're the one taking the test. So we try our best to make it as easy for our teachers to make the test as valid as possible. So there are other ways. One of the things that we did in school was we tried to migrate a lot of the assessments to as many performance-based one as possible, so that it becomes very genuine work for the students. But of course, that's something you want to decide upon given the resources that your students also have. So more than any time, no, this is the time wherein the gap is wide in terms of equity. And I really hope we are able to, as teachers, we're able to manage that well. I think more than anything, that's our job, to allow our students to learn despite the situation. I don't have an idea. No, Flubaroo, and Michael Lesondra has a question. So if there's any idea if Flubaroo or Autocrat are add-ons listed in DepEd, I'm not sure. But what you can do is you can contact your admin and ask them to push those add-ons to you, because they're free. There should be no reason why they can't. You can also just add it on your own. If if add-ons are locked in your domain, perhaps you can write your supervisors to ask for those add-ons, because they're free. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Pretty sure they're going to want to show that. Okay, I'll check on the certificates that haven't been received. Maybe because there's so many of you that it is not generating. Just give it a few minutes, and then I'll fix it right after this. Don't worry. Okay, are there any more questions? Limitations. Maria Beatriz Gotopol has a question on what are the limitations of Google Forms that you should watch out for. So I already mentioned those limitations already, but you can do many things. So that's something that you can do. Is there anything else? Okay. So for Michelle, she was asking about test integrity, and I think I touched on that a little. Timing it is actually nice. One of the things that you can do if you don't have Timify is you can limit it to your class time. So if, let's say, you're sending them your class, let's say, is from 10:20 to 11, and you're taking the quiz at that time, you can actually physically just close the form at at 11, and then they can no longer access it. You can also ask them actually to take a screenshot of themselves with the device if you want to do that. So those are one of the ways that you can. There. Okay, I think I've covered most of the questions. Did I miss anything, Iris?
Wala naman na po, ma'am.
Okay.
So, I think that's it, Ma'am
Alright.
Maan. I think our viewers have well understood our topic for this afternoon. So, that ends our Q&A portion. We would like to thank our speaker, Ma'am Maan. Ateneo ICTC presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Ma'am de Guzman for her invaluable time as a resource speaker for this afternoon's webinar session on effective online assessment using Google Forms.
Yes, thank you
So
for
thank you
having
very
me
much,
also.
Ma'am Maan.
Thank you for the Easter. Thank you for having me also. Yes,
Until next time po.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much po. We would also like to thank our viewers for staying with us throughout the session. So good news po, we will be having our 6th and 7th session of webinar series next week. Details will be posted on our Facebook page. So yung mga hindi pa po nagla-like ng Facebook page namin, better na i-like nyo na po kasi dun namin ipopost yung details dun sa dalawa naming webinars. So your certificates are ready. Kindly accomplish the online evaluation flashed on screen. The online evaluation will be closing at 5 p.m. this afternoon. So yung dalawang link po yung nandyan. Yung isa po ay yung sa amin and yung isa po ay kay Ma'am Maan po na evaluation form. Again, thank you everyone. Kindly like our Facebook page at Ateneo ICTC and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updates on our free webinar sessions and upcoming training online. See you again! Thank you very much po. Until next week.